Yes, I think that there's quite a lot of talking about the decouple these days actually between China and the US. I was just attending the economist conference on World Trade Symposium. There was a lot of debate, a lot of discussion on decouple. But I think that China and the US has been greatly intertwined in the last 4 decades. For example, for the last 4 decades since China and US established diplomatic ties, which this year is exactly 40 years of that, there's about 70,000 US companies set up operation in China. And they are also actually, they generate 700 to 900 billion US dollars of the revenue in China. So it's actually embedded into all aspects of all industries in China. And I think that is really difficult. We are not talking about a global value chain. It's actually the US company operation in China, investment in China has been built up in the last 4 decades. And China is also a country that has a very difficult to decouple because China has all the about 200 products leading manufacturer in the world. China is also have the best infrastructure, logistics support. For example, of all the best container report, most of them are in China. China has built a fast railway, speed highway, railway network actually, and then the total length of the speed railway in China is equal to the next 10 countries combined. So you can imagine that with this kind of a high standard infrastructure, on top of that you have also the China now, the 1 billion smartphone users. The 5G is going to be widely available, and also you have 170 million talent of all types in China. So such a great industrial base is difficult. So I think that the US company coming to China not only use China as an export base, but also now China itself, it's a growing big market. For example, China now has a 400 million middle class buyers. In the next 10, 15 years, China could have 800 million, will be the largest consumer market in the world. And so from all aspects you can think of, it's such a big decision. If it's want to decouple, it would be a very foolish decision. And then if they want to abandon the market, this is I don't think it's possible. So from my point of view, I think that China and US are closely intertwined and complementary to each other. And actually, the China and US are even now having this first phase of the deal is coming up. And for example, I just come from Beijing that the second annual China Import Expo this year, the most exhibition, the largest space of exhibition was occupied by the US companies. There's over 200 US companies coming to the second China Import Expo in Shanghai. You can imagine being the largest participating multinational from US, the largest group from US. This actually shows the US business interest. So in this kind of a situation, if we talk about decouple, I think it's not realistic and it's not responsible. I think the fear or the worry about China's rise actually is coming from several aspects. I think first is that because of China's development in the last 7 decades, particularly in the last 4 decades of opening up, China has quickly embraced the globalization, and China become the second largest economy of the world. So there's a little bit of what Professor Graham Allison actually said also in CCG in Beijing, in my think tank, that there's a huge trap, that because of a rising power is catching up fast, the existing power may feel some anxiety and worries on that. So that probably reflecting some of that. Second is that Chinese system is a little unique. It has its own merits. It's actually based on the Chinese characteristic, and so that this system is very effective in China. It has generated the second largest economy and kept economic growth above 6% in the recent few years. which means every year there's a new Australia GDP added to China. And thirdly is I think China probably didn't really explain well, the rationale behind its success. We still have a lot of work to do on that. But all of this, I think because of this unfamiliar with China and because of the fear that worry about China, then these people felt China probably is a threat, and the worries come from that. But I think that is groundless and is invalid because China benefit from its opening up to the outside world, and China is really a great learner from the world. China is always wants to collaborate with all the other countries. China now welcomes more foreign investment to China. And for example, China understands there may be some concerns, there may be some criticism, but China actually is responding to that. For example, this year, the National People's Congress has swiftly passed a new law called the China Foreign Investment Law. And then in that law, it actually stipulates that no forced technology transfer and IPR violation will be severely punished, and all foreign companies should be treated equal. So you can see that China is actually taking measures on the legal basis to combat any violation of against foreign company or their interests. As a matter of fact, this month China just released the implementation details, implementation regulation of foreign investment law, and that law actually will be taking effect on January 1st, 2020, as President Xi actually announced that at the G20 Osaka meeting. So you can see the environment is greatly improved. As a matter of fact, the World Bank has just recently said about China, and then China, 2 years ago, China was ranked 7th to something as the most easy country to do business. Now it's ranked about 30 something. It's greatly improved in the last 2 years. It's now better than France in terms of its business environment, and that is credited by the World Bank. So you can see actually China is doing all it can, and then China is really catching up, and to meet the international standards, China is actively want to engage in globalization, multilateralism, WTO reform, climate change, and all the things that international community are really welcome. So I think China is also launched a Belt and Road Initiative, and which is a great new investment plan, actually, a development plan for the developing country, a new impetus for the world economic growth for the next several decades. So I think that China still have a long way to go. China is not perfect, but I think that all the direction is right, and we need to really work with China. Do not fear about China, and don't think China is a threat, so that I think we can really have this new economic engine that we can continue to contribute to the world economy growth. Now, for the last 10, 15 years, about 30%. In the future, could be 40%. So it's really, the well-being of the mankind that we really need to accept China and work with China. China actually in the last 7 years has launched this gigantic, big development plan called Belt and Road Initiative. This is really a great initiative. So far, China has signed MOU with 130 some countries and also with 30 some international organizations. I think it's a great time that China and the US can work together, because the US has a lot of experience. And the US have done, for example, after the Second World War, US has launched the Marshall Plan, actually revived Europe and build Europe into more modern society, modern countries like we have today. So Americans have a lot of experience, a lot of technology, a lot of capital. As a matter of fact, you can see the World Bank, IMF, even WTO was all coming out of that Bretton Woods system, which is led by the US. So US is really the leader in this aspect. But China, on the other hand, has actually in the last 4 decades has developed a huge capacity and capabilities in terms of infrastructure development. China has the best infrastructure layout in the world now. China actually built the fastest and largest speed railway network in the world. China has the total length of a kilometer of a railway, of high-speed railway in China is equal to the next 10 countries combined. And also China has great ports. China has all the highway. China has all the infrastructure, 5G telecommunication. China has about 1 billion smartphone users. China become a cashless society. So all those, and also China has a downstream, upstream, all the value chain is all about 200 product. China is a leading manufacturer in the world. So I think with this kind of capacity and with the U.S. expertise, U.S. Soft power and the institutional leadership, I think China and the U.S. can work together on those Belt and Road Initiative, and so that we can have another impetus for the world for the next 7 decades. Because for the past 75 years, we have enjoyed largely in peace. We haven't had the Third World War. We have the trade, we have the prosperity. But I think in the next 7 decades, if China and the U.S., the G2, the 2 largest economy, can work together on this Belt and Road Initiative, can really make it a win-win and actually beneficial to the other countries along the Belt and Road. It will be a great contribution to the human development in history. And also, I think now China also wants to make more countries participate. China has set up the AIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, now has 100 countries as a member. So China welcomes U.S. to be a member of AIB and can work together, and we can work together with World Bank, with Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, European Construction Bank, and all the development banks. And the U.S. can play a significant role in that, and I think it's really a great idea that we get multilateralized of this Belt and Road. As President Xi said, it's a jointly consulted, jointly built, and jointly benefit. So it's a mutually beneficial project, not only for China but for U.S., but also mainly for the Belt and Road countries. So I think that if we really work together, Belt and Road will be a great new world development plan that we can work for, that we can provide a new paradigm shift, provide a new transformation and a new infrastructure revolution for all the brand new world in the years to come.